like to invite to the stage Zain Wadee, Managing Director at Randstad Sourceright. Zain Wadee.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to present at this wonderful forum. It's a great organization, and I'm very honored to be presenting. Today I'm going to talk about future leaders. I'm going to give a brief presentation on some of the trends that we're seeing in leadership, some of the shifts we're seeing with Generation X, Generation Z, and the millennials coming into the workplace as leaders, not just as colleagues and employees. I'm going to be scene setting, and then I have a panel that will be opening up to talk about some of the topics and themes in a bit more detail. So when we look at future leadership, I was interested in some of the sessions this morning talking about robots and how robots are potentially terrifying us. Are they going to take our jobs? Are they dynamically changing the way that we operate? But I think some of us in the older generations probably fear young people as much as we do robots. But we are going to have to work with them and work with them as leaders. They have different expectations, different values, and a different sense of purpose than many that have gone between them. But at the same time, we also need to look at how we integrate within the workplace. Our research is showing that a large number of baby boomers will be leaving the workplace, but there still are others, Generation X, which a number of us in the audience are today, who will still be leaders as well. And it's how we assimilate and work together that will be critical to the success of many of our businesses. So just looking at some of the trends that I'll look to be exploring in more detail with my panel is around what really makes millennials tick. What sort of interests do they have? Stability juxtaposed with flexibility may seem a slight contradiction, but I'll explain. From a stability perspective, we're seeing from our research that young people, young future leaders, want more stability now than they did even 2 years ago. And some of this is to do with changes in the geopolitical landscape. They see loads of things happening in the world around them, and security in the workplace has now become more important as a result of some of those factors. But at the same time, flexibility is still key. For example, there are new ways of working, whether that's on interim contracts, freelance basis, or on the gig economy. All of those models are relevant to young people and to future leaders, but at the same time, permanent workforce, more established ways of working are also equally important, and stability within the organizations that they choose to pursue their careers in resonates and has real relevance. So are we seeing a more loyal group of future leaders? If properly engaged, yes. Our leaders of the future will not just be whimsical folk who change because a new opportunity comes up paying slightly more. If they buy into their leaders, buy into their organizations, and see that there's a real sense of purpose, then they can be retained and stay loyal to their organization. And engagement is really, really key. Through some of the research I've looked at, a number of young future leaders question the traditional mores of the organization, where the value is just generated or focused on financial return. A number of future leaders want a sense of purpose. They want to believe that they work for an organization that has a real sense of purpose and is giving back something to the community. So that whole piece around engagement, a sense of purpose that they can connect with, is absolutely essential to future leaders. In terms of how the next generation are looking to work, they've grown up as digital natives. I was reading as well that the Generation Z, they're not only digital natives, they've got an innate sixth sense around digitalization. They don't see any other way of working at all. They see it as fundamentally obscure to them if they were expected to operate without technology. And technology has massively changed the way that we do work, the way that we operate within our work, where we work. Within the past year alone, over 60% of young people who responded to a Deloitte questionnaire said that they do not have to operate in a fixed place of work they have flexibility around where they operate. And amazingly, that figure has gone up by 20% in the last 12 months alone. So the workplace is being revolutionized. The concept of a fixed office where you go 5 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day is changing fast. It may not become obsolete, but it will certainly not be the norm for the future generation of leaders. And technology, we've talked a lot about technology in this forum today, but it is critical. It absolutely changes the experience that young people have with their employers, with the organization, but it also allows them to do more. So technology is a real value creator and a really important source of connectivity for the future generation. And a question that we'll be looking at as well is future leaders, what background will they come from? Will they be technologists? Will they be chief digital officers, rather than some of the traditional backgrounds where we've seen leadership emerge from in years gone by? So just looking in a little bit of detail at some of the research that my organization has done. So we've looked from we do a quarterly talent trends report, and looking at some of the outcomes from that report, from an HR, human capital perspective, 53% of leaders see increasing investment in digital technology is absolutely critical with being able to do business. And a third say that an insufficient amount of investment actually hinders the ability of organizations to reach out to millennials and Gen Z. If the right technology infrastructure is not there, they won't join the organization. So recruitment and retention become issues. But there is a but. A number of people feel that digital migration is moving too fast. I suspect that's probably the Generation Xers amongst us. I think the digital natives don't have that concern. So is technology only a positive? When the panel comes up, I do want to explore, are there any threats? I don't think our digital natives, our millennials, see it as a huge threat, but I do think we need to be wary of it. And we need to be aware of the differences between the emerging markets and our more established economies. I think we've talked again in the morning about outside of India, outside of other locations that are maybe more threatened. In the Western European environment, it's definitely a positive. But in terms of our future and how we evolve, I think we do need to look as well, are there any potential threats from the advances of technology? So just before I get my panel up, virtual working is absolutely critical. And this is something, going back to the comment I made earlier, that over 60% of people do not have to be in a fixed office. I think this is a really important aspect of how work can be done, how people can have more flexibility in how they operate. So this is something that we'll explore in a bit more detail with the panel. So on that note, I'd like to invite the panel to the stage. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me on stage. I'd just like to have the panel briefly introduce themselves before we go into our Q&A. So I'll start first here.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Beata Stelmach, and I represent General Electric. I'm responsible for Poland and the Baltic states.
Good afternoon. My name is Vincent. I'm a partner with AltoPartners, EMEA and Asia Pacific, and I'm looking forward to talking to you all.
Hi, my name is Nick Butt. I'm with Accenture. I'm a managing director looking after our Western European operations.
Thank you all. Thank you for joining us. So the first topic I'd like to explore is flexible working. In my presentation, I shared the fact that flexible working is fundamentally important to future leaders and increasingly is a way that they can operate. Nick, can I start with you and ask you just to maybe look at some of the benefits that different employment models bring to the workforce, in your opinion?
Great. Well, I think it's interesting. At the very beginning, when Wojtek Poplaski we're talking about how the workforce was changing. There was an icon there of someone wearing a tie. I think something which is probably more relevant would be people wearing pajamas. Because the amount of people working from home, and I can see a number of people smiling, yeah, how many people have been on calls in the morning wearing their pajamas? And I think that in itself is sort of an iconic sort of change in terms of how business is working. So people want to have that flexibility. People want to be able to work remotely. You know, the office environments, you know, the office space that we use is going down and down and down. We have the tools and technology now. You know, security was always a concern, which is the reason why we had a lockdown building or lockdown office. But the technology has now enabled us to actually be a lot more virtual in terms of how we work. But equally, people who've grown up with, you know, iPads, iPhones, you know, you hear about the children with the televisions trying to swipe the screen. You know, that is something that they're quite used to now. So they want to work virtually. You know, it's something I enjoy working as well, because it gives you the flexibility. It gives you, you know, but there is another challenge associated with that. You're always connected. You're always on. And I think that in itself can actually sort of make additional challenges, you know, certainly from a leadership perspective. But I think, you know, technology is the one thing I think we've heard it's moving fast and moving faster and faster and faster. But how do we actually keep our people properly skilled up within that environment? You know, we've got a large group still within the workforce who are Generation X. You know, there is a fear of change. We as humans actually don't like change. We go through that change curve, it takes time, but you know, can we evolve quickly enough to actually keep up with all the change which is going on? So I think in terms of the flexibility, that's what we want, that's what we need. It will be increasing in that case. You know, it's not just about one of employment, people working from home. Do they want to be working individually or do they want to be working for a company? You know, they want that extra flexibility. So I think that's certainly something we are seeing. We have a large amount of home workers, we have a lot of virtual operations going on, and I will see that continuing more and more.
Thank you, Nick. Beata, could I hand over to you to maybe follow up on something? As GE, you clearly employ a large number of people, but do you find that flexibility is opening up additional pools of talent to you?
Well, it's probably today it's impossible to think the other way, because having 300,000 people on the globe, we say that having been on the market 125 years, we say that we are still the startup, because you have to adjust your business model to the current times. And with such a spread number of people and businesses around the world, it's impossible to allocate a dedicated desk to a particular person. So you have video conferences, you have using all the virtual tools to navigate the company. But at the same time, this is of course the challenge for the leaders, because how to motivate people who are not forced to come every morning to the office and just to stay 8 hours during the day. So this is the challenge for the leaders, but at the same time, this is a huge opportunity to attract people to work in such an environment, especially, particularly, to keep people still active, like young mothers. Today, if you have a phone, if you have the access to internet, you can work from home. So a lot of young women who so far, all 10, 20, 30 years ago, had to exclude themselves from the working place, today they can work from home. And I think that those companies who understand that and who offer such an opportunity, they will survive.
Absolutely. And that flexibility, particularly around tapping into pools of talent that were potentially excluded by traditional ways of working, do you find that they're still able to operate as leaders when they work flexibly and remotely? Or do you have to be in the office more regularly to be a leader?
I think that you have to be connected with your people, no matter where you are on the globe. Connected in order to motivate them and in order to empower them to act even without that, physical presence in the office. To motivate, to empower them, to let them understand that taking the risk is something that it's our joint responsibility.
Sure. Excellent. Richard, you've worked in a number of places around the world. Do you see any difference geographically at the moment around this acceptability and adoption of this flexible working concept?
Yeah, I've worked in Asia for 5 years, and I recently came back to the Netherlands. I'm Dutch. But you see a big difference, I see, between, let's say, the emerging markets in Asia versus, let's say, Europe. In Asia, if you look at the people, there's much more competition. People have to fight for opportunities, for hiring. There are many people who are in line, for example, to go to Singapore. If you see in Europe, and looking at the Netherlands, Randstad is also from the Netherlands, people are more, already, the businesses are more advanced. So this means that creativity is much more needed from the younger generation in Europe versus in Asia, where it's more the basics. Development of the region is going slower right now, but I think moving forward, Asia will pick up and Asia will become a pretty dominant region in the world.
Sure. Oh, thank you, Richard. One of the things I alluded to as well from a flexibility perspective is it a contradiction to say that millennials want flexibility, but now they're wanting more stability as well? Maybe I've asked you first, Nick, from your perspective, have you seen this at Accenture that people are, millennials, Gen Z, they are looking for a stable career with you?
Well, I think everybody always wants to grow and develop, but I think the big thing in terms of the change is, we used to have cycle times of 2 to 3 years for a promotion cycle, certainly through our model. But we've got an instant gratification sort of society now. People want to actually achieve things and see they're actually progressing their careers faster and faster. And I think what we have to do is very much adapt that to actually reflect that need for that progression and development. So I think everybody's got it. I think the timescales in terms of what people are expecting is changing. And I think unless we adapt to that, people will actually be turned off, particularly because given the flexibility we're talking about in workplace, people's confidence to actually move from one role to another, I think, is increasing as well. The opportunities there, they have transferable skills and they feel comfortable taking them elsewhere. So I think from a leadership perspective, we do need to adjust and adapt to that.
Yeah, sure. Richard, you were going to come in with a point.
I wanted to add one more comment. If you talk about flexibility, it depends also on the culture. Where do you work, which country, which region of the world? And for example, in Asia, what I've seen when I started there in 2007, there were no temp jobs. Interim jobs were hardly available. Now, let's say 10 years later, you see much more temp organizations going into Asia, whether it's Singapore or China. You see the flexibility coming up there as well, which was, Randstad is from 1969 or something like this. So for a long time, there are temp jobs in the Netherlands, but in Asia, it's only the last couple of years.
Sure.
Well, I think that we have heard a lot about, that digital revolution. And I think this is not only that business models has changed for companies, but also this is the challenge for leaders, because those who become our future customers are millennials. So these are not only our employees, but these are our future customers. So in order to understand their needs, in order to understand their expectations as customers, it's really great to have them in our team. So, because, and if you then again empower them to be part of the decision makers, how to prepare the campaign, how to prepare and shape the strategy of the company, this is exactly how you anticipate how the market will develop. Yeah. And, offering them the path in their career, in your company, then it's not a traditional way of thinking as we thought 20 years ago, thinking about training programs, etc., etc. But this is also how you shape the current environment around your working place. When you started your presentation, there was a beautiful picture of the modern office. So today we talk about open space, but open space nowadays looks totally different as we remember as dealing rooms in banks 20 years ago. Today these are colorful couches, these are, nice kitchens. So places where you can attract people and that they could change their opinions, discussions, jokes, because today people work 24 hours a day.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd just like to pick up on the point you make there around millennials also looking at things from a consumer's lens, you know, how they would buy. As GE, do you actually, you know, utilize some of the knowledge, the insights of young leaders to help shape your offerings to your consumers?
Oh, definitely, because of the digital revolution. So GE, traditionally as a technology provider, today everybody understands that technology hardware without software cannot be offered to the customers. Customers expect solutions. And, you know, using the knowledge, the way of shaping vision, how to not only collect data, not from software established in power plants, for example, but how to use the digital world. So this is exactly what young generation is much better equipped and much better prepared for such challenges. So definitely, we even recently we have hired so many new IT engineers, specialists, young people who do not really understand what borders mean. They just partly live in the virtual world.
Absolutely. I'd just like to explore the theme in a slightly different angle with you, Nick. I mean, I talked earlier that not being digitally enabled, not having the right technology in an organization can be a real turn-off and result in people leaving. Have you seen any of these sort of pressures, you know, within your organization where they maybe think the pace isn't fast enough, the pace of change or the pace of adoption of leading-edge technology?
Well, I think coming from a technology business, you know, we are sort of leading quite a lot of the change. So we are, I guess, sort of very fortunate having our series of different businesses that allow us to drive forwards. And if I look at it, over the last 2.5 years, we've taken 30,000 roles we've automated. And that creates quite a challenge organisationally. How do you manage that change? Now, fortunately, we are growing, so we've managed to redeploy those people. But I think displacement in an organisation is probably one of the biggest leadership challenges we've got. And certainly work we're doing with a number of other clients, helping them through the sort of automation roles. Their ability to actually redeploy or relocate or potentially, you know, redeploy outside the organisation is a real challenge. So for us, I think, you know, technology change very, very fast. But there's an interesting point, actually, and it's some of my some leadership colleagues, when they thought about technology, it was one of, thank God for technology. We can stop thinking about the people issues. Technology will solve all our problems. Hey!
Yeah.
And then they started going through it. So our technologists suddenly became real premier sort of players within the organisation. And about 6 months through the process, they started thinking, oh, crikes, this is actually even more complicated. Yeah, how do you mesh technology with people and the speed of the change that you're actually driving as well? As I said before, people don't like change, but technology is coming here very, very fast. And in a very, very competitive environment, unless we keep changing and keeping with the pace, you know, we have competitors there. I think it was said this morning, you know, even the captors are being challenged because things are going there. So I think we don't see a challenge of one of speed of change. I think the change challenge is actually getting the people and the organisation and the leadership to be able to actually respond at the right sort of pace to get there.
Yep. No, perfect. I'd like to move us on from technology to explore the themes of purpose and engagement. And one of the big things that I've gleaned from practical experience, also from reading, is that millennials, young leaders in general, place a lot more emphasis on purpose, that they are making a direct contribution. It's not just to some far-off corporate goal. Richard, maybe I'll start with you around the sense of purpose. What do you think actually makes our future generation of leaders tick?
I think the key thing is meaning. You mentioned the word purpose, but you need to give meaning for them to work for you and to join your company. It's not just more about making money. It's about what is your company doing to create a better world, to add value, create value for society. And companies like Nestlé say good food for good life, or companies like Unilever are focusing much more on societal contribution. So I think millennials want to be part of that. They want to be part of companies which do something good to the world, and not just about being greedy or working for leaders who want to go for power. And that's, I think, also something with technology. If technology is in the wrong hands, where can it lead, where can it go? And that's dangerous. So meaning, flexibility, that's important for millennials. Yeah.
Thanks, Richard. Beata, from, clearly, GE, you've described it as a startup in some ways, but it's a large company with, a wide number of investors and stakeholders to satisfy. Do you feel that some of the points that Richard's raised there can sit naturally alongside those, in some ways, quite short-term corporate goals?
No, not short-term. Definitely not short-term. Current structures of global companies, even they are huge, large, operating on the globe, these structures are different than some time ago. They are more flat. And also the system of engaging, or the philosophy of engaging people, employees, to joint activities is very important, is very crucial, because then you build the big family within the company. So supporting local initiatives, but also, sometimes there is no border because between local initiative or something that company values for. And having spoken about flat structures, it also reflects the way of hierarchy in the company. So it's no longer command and control way of managing people. I tell you what to do. You tell me what you think would be the best for our family. And there is no problem that you are, a junior millennial employee, you can send an email to the CEO because you have a brilliant idea. So I think this is the current also expectation, and what millennials, what young people really appreciate, because then they feel they are part of this family.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting thing. And I'm going to pose a question to Nick, building on that theme. I think we're focusing a lot on what, I guess, makes young leaders tick. If we reverse that slightly to say, how do we as slightly older, not much older, leaders respond to that? Because I would say that the traditional concept of leading from the front, Beata, as you say, command and control, doesn't necessarily resonate. Sometimes it's more leading from behind and being in it with them. What have you seen, Nick, and how have you seen Accenture adapt to some of those requirements?
Yeah, I'm glad you were listening when we were doing our preparations, and I think it's absolutely valid. We've gone from the leading from the front, and it was very much leading from the front, having the basics, the control, the discipline, and it's all about people who've got 5, 10, 15 years experience that actually have allowed them to become sort of leaders, and people have got the experience and they've been through it before. But now when all this change, and it is very much about sort of thinking about what have we got within our teams, what skills have we got? And, the people who are very comfortable with change, with innovation, with the digital era. It's about starting to identify specialists within our teams who can actually come forward. So from a leader perspective, it's one of, I don't have all the answers. So much before it was about, I know because I've been there and I've done this. But whereas now it's one of, well, actually you don't know all the answers. You haven't got perhaps the skills or background or experience to do that anymore. So the leaders that having to step back to allow others to come forward. So it's about having the confidence to allow young people. They may not have 5, 10, 15 years experience, but it's about bringing those specialists forwards and start leveraging all the skills we've got within the team. And I think that presents a very very different challenge to the leaders. But I think we need both. Because actually we still need some of that rigor, discipline, control, but also creating the environment for innovation, for change, and being creative. So I think it's actually quite a hard one to actually sort of model through, and I think we'll always have that.
Yeah. Richard, do you want to expand?
No, I agree with you, Nick. I mean, I'm in executive search, so many of my clients are asking for a new CEO or a new director. And they get rid of people who are hierarchical, who are too much command and control. So they like servant leadership. That's what they're looking for. Who can co-create, who can do partnerships with other firms. So it's much more in the value chain. But like Nick was saying, in the end you need both. You can't go from A to Z in one step. You need to go step by step. People need to follow. And you need to give the right people the opportunity. So you need some... you have to be bold when it's necessary, but at the same time be soft when it's also possible.
And I think from a sourcing perspective, it's brilliant. The last sort of big sourcing exercise I did, we had no job description. I wanted people who were curious. I wanted people who were creative. And the people who said, can I have a job description? Saying, I'm not interested. And it was really interesting. Actually, some of the people we got thought they would never join Accenture as an organisation. Yeah, but they said, we came because we were just interested. And I was thinking, that's the people I want. Yeah, it's a creative, interest, curious people, and it's a different way of sourcing.
Yeah. Talking about creativity, we're coming down to the last few minutes of our panel session, but I'd like my panelists to get the creative thinking hats on and gaze into your crystal balls. So, Nick, I'll start with you. What do you think the leaders of the future will look like in 5 years from now?
I think they'll look a lot younger. Yeah, and I think it's going to be that. I think people are more comfortable taking on leadership positions at a much, much earlier stage, and I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see more of a community of people as opposed to true standout leaders, and I think that's what people are really looking for. And I think you're still going to need the people, because people look to people to be led, and I think it's just the method of how that comes across. But I certainly think people, it'll certainly be a lot more junior. As roles get removed. I know when I was sort of growing up, they always said to us, you'll have much more freedom, much more free time to do it. And I think we've gone through the one where we had less time. But I think we're coming to an age where there will be more time, jobs will be more readily shared, and I think it will be the younger generation who will take us forwards.
Great. And Richard, being an executive search, you will be looking for the future CEOs in years to come. In my presentation, I talked about the fact that going forward, we may see CEOs coming from a different route, rather than being, say, accountancy or more traditional business functions. That maybe CIOs or digital routes or technologists could become future leaders. Do you think that will come to pass?
I think what's happening today in the world, it's all more about teamwork. And teams are working together, virtual teams, networks of teams are working together. So you need to create a common values, common culture. And with that, it will become natural. Who of the people are very good in dealing with others? Who are very good in controlling their own emotions about how to deal with other cultures, where things, they nod to you, they say yes, but they actually don't understand. How do you deal with that? Are you able to still get things done? So the future leaders will be, for me, people who are able to relate very well with others, understand different cultures, and at the same time are business people.
Perfect. And so in fact, one question that I'd like to pose to you as well is that clearly we're operating in times of optimism from a business perspective. We're seeing growth in a number of economies. What happens if we get another recession and things get bad again? Do we revert to type as leaders, go back to the old ways of command and control and much more structured ways of operating?
I think you have to be prepared for both, and the leader is not the one who has on the business card written that this is the leader. The leader is the one who can attract the others who are ready to follow during the bullish market and during the crisis. And I think that, it's a leadership style. GE, as I said, 125 years. the leadership style of Jack Welch was different. He was the CEO of 20 years. The next was Jeff Immelt, who was the CEO with a totally different leadership style during the crisis, during the beautiful times. And yesterday, it was the successor announced. So I think that, first of all, you have to be prepared for goods and for bads. And you have to understand how to attract the others to follow you.
I think this topic around crystal ball gazing could go on, but some really great insights from the panel. And I'd just like to thank you for your contribution today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.